Hey Revolutionaires, I'm really excited to bring you this week's episode with Jim Palmer, who's known as the Dream Business Coach, and also these days known as Captain Jim Palmer, which I'll explain that in a minute. But before we get to that, I wanted to remind everybody that if you're out there listening and you're getting something out of the show, please share it with your friends, tell your family about it, or your significant other, or your dog. Your dog might be interested in listening, or if you're out there and you know how to use iTunes and you're using iTunes, pop a review into iTunes. And, if you're getting something out of it when you do this, other people will get something out of it. And that's the fun part, is that you're turning other people onto it and helping them. So I would say do it now. Just do it now. I want to remind you guys about the power of doing it now. And the reason that's on my mind is that, recently I went to a night of music with my friend Tom, who's a guitar player, great singer, great guitar player, and he presented a night of music with friends and was talking about some of the struggles that he'd been going through lately with health issues and some of the political stuff that, is on his mind, weighs heavy on his mind because where he's coming from. But he mentioned that he went to this performance. He was telling some stories about his life and things that affected his life. And he went to this master class with Pat Martino, who's a famous jazz guitar player. So the jazz people out there know who Pat Martino is. It was a master class, and people are talking about jazz improvisation and nerding out about music. And someone in the crowd asked Pat, "Hey, could you recommend a great book that can, help us, get our heads around this stuff and learn this?" And, they were talking about the nitty-gritty of music, harmony, and theory. And Pat said, recommend a good book. Yeah, what would I recommend? And he came up with a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which has nothing to do with music, but is sort of a kind of a philosophy or, kind of a different view of the world book to basically, remind you that, hey, all that we have is the now. The future and the past are kind of in our imagination. But it was a good reminder to kind of, stay present and stay activated with what's going on today. So anyways, just wanted to mention that, but that's the reason to do it now. It makes you feel good when you do something that's on your mind, like, oh, I know I have to do that. If you just do it now, it's like, it just makes you feel better, So speaking of doing it now, I wanted to give you a quick demo before we get to the episode of the new Amazon Echo smart speaker that I got. And I put this on the Facebook page as well, but check this out. This is really cool. Alexa, play Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast.
Getting the latest episode of Jim's Reinvention Revolution. Here it is from TuneIn.
Hey Revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode. But you know what else I'm excited about right now? I'm excited to see
Alexa, stop.
Yeah.
Alexa, stop.
There she goes. Wow, isn't that awesome? I mean, okay, there she goes. Incredible. So just to let you know that, hey, if you're listening out there, you can listen on all the smart speakers that are out there, because the show's distributed to all the big players, so Apple, Google, Amazon, etc. So glad I got to show you that demo now. And right now, let's get to this week's episode with Captain Jim Palmer, who's been running his business online on his boat for the last year. This is a great episode, so here we go, Captain Jim.
Welcome to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit jimreinventionrevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim.
Hey everybody, this is Jim, and welcome to episode 28 of Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. And I'm talking today with Jim Palmer, the founder of the Dream Business Academy. And we're talking about how to create your dream business and maybe more importantly, your dream lifestyle. So I can't wait to get into this with Jim. So Jim, welcome to the revolution.
Hey Jim, how you doing? I love so you're Jim, I'm Jim. We got three Jims going on the show.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. That's exactly right. Hey, before we get into this, I just need to let people know that you're the founder of this Dream Business Academy. You've written, I think it is 7 books.
12 actually.
12 now? Wow, 12 books. Okay, sorry, I was just trying to find the number on your website here. You're running Dream Business TV, Dream Business Blog, Dream Business Radio. You've got these, courses and seminars, and you're doing this all from your boat?
That's right.
What is going on? What are you talking about? This seems like crazy to me.
Well, it's one of those overnight sensations that took 12, 15 years.
Right.
I started in 2001, and my business took many shapes and different ones. But ultimately, I got into internet marketing in 2007 and started a company called No Hassle Newsletters, and then created Concierge Print Mail on Demand, No Hassle Social Media, Custom Article Generator. I covered a number of internet businesses. And then in 2009, people were like, how are you doing all that? Of course, I was still in my home office at that point. And that's when I started my coaching program, which has been going on now for 9 years. So I pretty much, we as you and I are doing this, Jim, we've been on our boat for 1 year, my wife and I and our rescue dog, our big black lab Blue. And
wow.
We've been, our home port is the northern part of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland.
In Maryland, okay.
And when we moved on the boat, we then drove it. First time I've ever captained a 50-foot boat before, but we drove it to Rhode Island.
Wait, so you were not into sailing or kind of boating just casually before?
Power boating.
Power boating.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not a sailor. We had a 30-foot boat that we enjoyed. My wife would get out of work on Friday, and we'd just zip down and spend, most 3-day weekends throughout the summer on our Sea Ray.
Okay.
And that's how we fell in love with boating. And then when she left her job, that means we had no ties geographically anywhere. And, we've raised 4 kids. We now have 3 grandkids. And I was tired of an acre and a half of grass and long driveway in the winter and trees coming down. And I'd been there, done that. It was a great home to raise our family. And Stephanie was looking for an adventure. She wanted to travel. And she goes, well, we love boating. What if we lived on a boat? And of course, the first line out of my mouth was the old Jaws line. Well, we're going to need a bigger boat. So
yeah, right.
So
exactly.
Ultimately, that was in April of 2017.
Wow. Okay.
And we made the decision in June, and I started, putting our current boat on the market, and we spent the summer getting our house ready. Mm-hmm. We listed it in September. The day after we did it ourselves, the day after we put it up online, we had 8 showings, actually received an offer like 3 days later. So it sold quickly. We bought the boat in December, but we didn't want to move on the boat in the winter. So she found us a 1-bedroom cottage on a farm that would let us rent month to month and bring our dog Blue.
I see.
And so then we moved on our boat in April 2017 and went up to Rhode Island and back, and then for this past winter we drove all the way down to Florida. And as you and I are talking, we're in Hampton, Virginia.
Okay.
We have 2 more travel days to get back to our home port of Chesapeake. We'll stay there for 2 months and see our other kids. And
okay, I was just going to ask you. We ask you where you were. Okay, cool. Well, you know what? This brings up one question of, I was checking out your stuff and videos, and I see these things in the background. My question is, how does living on a boat now, how does that affect an acoustic guitar?
Okay. So I was a drummer in high school. I was in some bands. I was a drummer, but I loved the guitar. And then when I moved out of my parents' house at like 19, you can't take drums to an apartment, so I sold my drums and bought a guitar. Kind of taught myself how to play.
Okay.
I used to play a lot. Like I love Creedence and all the 70s classic and stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
But so yeah, the guitar. In fact, I had like 3 guitars at one time, but this one goes with me everywhere. The fact of the matter is, my fingers are so soft I couldn't play for 10 minutes without being in pain. But it's always with me. Once in a while,
I see it, man.
I
just
see pick it up and I strum it and I just pick at, or I hold it. It's just something about a guitar, man. But
yeah,
if I ever get the time and stop working as hard as I'm working, I may pick it up again and become a little proficient. But right now it's more of a decoration, but it's my buddy, so I always want to look at it.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. Well, it's I should tell people it's a green Ovation, I think is the style of guitar, right?
Oh, so the Ovation,
that's the one I saw in the video.
Unit.
Okay.
Oh, okay. The guitar I brought on the boat is a wood guitar, acoustic electric wood guitar.
Gotcha.
The Ovation is great electrically, but with the plastic back, it doesn't sound wonderful just acoustically.
Right. Okay, I gotcha.
I like that nice, rich, warm sound. So I brought the wooden. Probably not the best decision, but what the hell?
Well, that's what I was curious about, because I know guitars can be very kind of sensitive to, changes, humidity, moisture, and all that kind of stuff. I play a little guitar, and of course I play saxophone. I'm a musician, so I'm always interested in people's connections to music, and I think it's a great meditation, stress relief, and that's really what my dream job would be if to figure out for myself. So as we get back to the to the Dream Academy stuff here, keep that in mind that that would be my dream job, is to play music, still be able to dig into the technologies and serve my clients that I do in my gymming group business, but build my business larger as an entrepreneur so that I can spend less time and figure out how to run it if I want to be on a boat,
Well, I mean, the technology makes that possible, Jim. I mean,
Right.
If you think about it, if I want to learn how to play a song, I'll go guitar tab, Saturday night, it's all right for fighting or something, Elton John or something, whatever.
Right, sure.
And it'll come up, and there are umpteen people who will show you, and they'll record themselves on video. You can buy charts. You can get. Sometimes I've seen many people do private lessons. Like, not everybody wants to drive down to the local music store,
Right.
sit in a room and play. I mean, you could learn so much. I learned how to drive my first boat on YouTube because I never had a twin engine boat before. I mean, there's so much you can learn. And so one of the things that really took me to the next level was when I discovered the internet, because my first business, I was writing and designing newsletters for local companies, chambers of commerce, nonprofits, things like that. So my client base in my mind was local businesses, and how far am I willing to travel to go to the client. When I discovered the internet, and I thought I could literally have clients anywhere in this country, and then when I kicked down the walls even further, I've had subscribers to No Hassle newsletters in 9 different countries. So I would create this content and templates, and people would buy them. And I have to tell you, a lot of people think, well, I'm going to need hundreds or thousands of people. And well, no, you don't. It depends what your business model is. But if you, Jim, if you even had a business model where it was, say, $47 a month, and let's say, out of 50 states, let's say you attracted 2 from every state. I try and break it down so people can think, well, that's possible. Right. So that would be 100 customers. That's $4,700 a month, times 12. That's $56,000 a year coming into your bank from people who just want to get something from you every month, whether it be sheets or videos or lessons or, once or twice a month you jump on a live stream and answer questions. I mean, there's so many possibilities that technology makes it possible.
Oh, it really does, and that's the fascinating thing that I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you're, as I dig farther into this, world of technology and try to, see the future coming, like, I think what's really important is your mindset and being open and being interested in exploring and tasting some of these new technologies that are out there. How did you get going from your newsletter days and what was the vehicle back then, like when you first started? Were you actually like mailing out newsletters, and what got you going into the internet, and what opened your mind to explore it,
Well, it was print and mail newsletters. I mean, actual, paper and ink, you put them in the mail newsletters. And that's what I still do today through No Hassle newsletters. That's not it's an online subscription, but I provide templates that you can actually mail to your customers.
Oh, okay.
One of the things I say is, if you want to get a 100% deliverability of your newsletter, put it in the mail, because
Right.
It will get there.
Right.
And so the technology that makes it all possible, first of all, I have writers and designers now. I used to do it all myself, chief cook and bottle washer in the early days, but now I have a team that puts together the monthly templates and content. We have a membership site, so everybody that belongs to No Hassle newsletters, they just sign in every month and download the latest things. So it's amazing. And by the way, when I talk technology, I'm probably one of the most rudimentary online marketers there is. I mean,
Right.
It's funny. I go on some of these interviews, Jim, and they say, tell me a couple apps to help businesses. And I semi-joke. My kids ask me, what apps you got? And I said, I have Gmail. Honestly, there's not a lot that I need to run my business. I do hire people because I don't know how to build a membership site. So I had somebody build me a really cool membership site, and people opt in. I'm more the visionary in the market, and I just hire people to do that. And so when people come to my website and they opt in, now they start getting email and things like that. But it really, so much of it is a mindset-based thing. Like when I in 2007, when I created No Hassle newsletters, I started learning from a probably my greatest mentor to this day, Dan Kennedy. And Dan had this saying. He says, you will get paid far more for who you are than what you do. So it's not me being a good producer of newsletters. I need to be seen as the go-to person. Who's the guy who knows more about newsletter marketing than anybody? And so when Dan told me that, that's when I created the Newsletter Guru. So for years I used to be called the Newsletter Guru. I've now morphed into the Dream Business Coach, but the Newsletter Guru. And we talk about mindset, Jim, and part of my hang up was, oh my God, am I going to call myself the Newsletter Guru? First of all, it sounds corny. Second of all, I never went to school for design. I self-taught desktop publishing. I screw up the English language, and I'm going to call myself a writer. All this head trash.
Right.
And honestly, people want to pay for value. They want to pay for things. They're willing to invest in things that are going to help them grow their business. Now, if I believe that, and I do, then all I had to do was create some really good newsletters. It doesn't matter that I didn't graduate college. It doesn't matter that I occasionally, when I used to do a lot of the writing, mess things up. I just found these online editors. You can get things proofread and fixed for like $5.
Right.
You can do all. So I started learning all these different things to take my strength, and then I would support my weaknesses, so that when I put a finished product out there, I always give full credit to my book editor. Her name is Anne. And I tell everybody that interviews me, or when I'm at my own live event, I tell people about Anne. I said, she makes me sound like I passed the 8th grade. I mean, all the stuff in my books is mine. I write it, but then I give it to her and said, okay, make it sound like I passed the 8th grade. That's my strategy.
I gotcha. So, well, speaking of that, I mean, you passed the 8th grade, right?
I certainly did.
Okay. You never know. Some people I've talked to dropped out of school, so.
No. I just a little bit. No, I had 2 years of college, and then I became a manager of a bicycle store at 21, and that started my whole career. So I took off. Then I got married at 21, had a kid at 23. So I had to start making money.
Yeah, right. There's some motivation right there.
Yeah, I had 4 kids by the time I was 27. Then we figured out what caused that. And
yeah, right. Oh, that's funny. Well, you know what? Thanks for sharing that. I was kind of joking too, but I wanted to see what your background was, because I think it's a great lesson for everybody that, with the maturation really of the internet that's here today, and the connection economy and the technologies now that are available. I mean, the world is really open to you. Yes, it's disrupting business models. Yes, it's causing some angst. Yes, people are questioning, the validity of social networks or AI and all these things. But there's so much opportunity if, like you said, you get your mind right and realize, there's value out there. What do you have personally that you can create, that you can offer, that creates value? And, it seems like the sky is just the limit these days.
Yeah, and Jim, so much of the training that I do and working with my clients, I don't make them better at what they do. I make them better entrepreneurs. You referenced a video that I put out recently called "The Difference Between an Entrepreneur and a Small Business Owner." A small business owner, typically, if you want to paint with a broad brushstroke, has a kind of a corporate mindset. Like, I'm focused on sales. If I want to earn more, I got to sell. If you're in a brick and mortar store and you just reach capacity, your next inclination, if you want to earn more, is I got to open another store. So it's always focused on selling more of what you currently sell. An entrepreneur is somebody who's more wealth creation minded, means, okay, I'm maxing out this one. What's another revenue stream that I can create? So I at one time I probably had 8 revenue streams. I think I've got 4 right now. So coaching is my main one, book sales, product sales, my live event, and then, no hassle newsletters, things like that. So there's different revenue streams. And so an entrepreneur thinks, I have a goal. And for me, my goal, I want to be able to live on the boat. I want to work 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then we travel, and I want to be able to, work with my clients. And so that was my goal. But so what's really important is you have to become more married to the goal and not necessarily how you get there. People become so, I'll just have to use the word married again. They become so married to who they are now and not who they can be down the road.
Right.
I have a free Facebook group called Build Your Dream Business Now, and I do this thing called Free Training Thursday. And this week I'm actually teaching on what we call the imposter syndrome, because that is something that just holds so many people back. Like, And it's interesting that whether you're earning 50 grand a year or 250 or $1 million a year, most people suffer from the imposter syndrome, and it sounds something like this. Oh my gosh, I hope they don't really find out that I am only, that type of thing. It has to do with self-doubt and things like that.
Right.
And when I started my business in 2001, it wasn't as accepted, Jim, it wasn't accepted in kosher to have a home-based business like people have today, or a boat-based business.
Right.
But in 2001, when I started calling on potential clients, the name of my first company was Dynamic Communication, very corporate sounding, right? And I was really afraid people were going to ask where my office was, because my office was an old computer on my dining room table when I started.
Right.
And I was afraid. Well, and so one or two times, and I'd say, "Well, I'm over by the Eagle View Corporate Park." "Oh, really? Where are you?" And I said, "No, I'm off of Township Line Road." Most people let it drop, but once or twice somebody would press, and I said, "Yeah, I actually live on Saddle Drive, and I have a home-based office." And I would hold my breath, like, "Get out of here!" That would ever happen, right? And he goes, "Oh, that's so cool. I wish I could work out of my house." But it's a somewhat humorous, simple story, but it shows the destructive power of the imposter syndrome, because until I really built a business, I felt like an imposter. I had a business card. It said President of Dynamic Communication. I'd been in business for a week, and I felt like, who am I to be putting myself out there as the president of my own corporation?
Right. Well, no, I think this is so valuable to just wrap your head around, because I've had those feelings. I was looking into your background a little bit. I'm glad you brought up the imposter part, because I felt that when I was first starting the podcast, for example. It's like a lonely thing when you're just getting this idea concept in your own mind, right, started, and thinking like, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to do this? And then you're pulling it together, and then the moment you step out and put your name on that business card and hand it to the first potential client or whatever, you're really crossing that line in your mind of, well, here we go. Can I really do this? Am I really this guy? And it's really all about mindset. You have to really, like you said, kind of envision your future self, what you want to become, and kind of really hold on to that image, right?
Yeah. So just stay on the mindset piece. I want to give you and your listeners a nugget here. Okay. It's something I teach called Become Immune to Criticism, because at the center of all of this, even the imposter syndrome and everything else, a lot of us have a fear of being criticized, or, God forbid we start something and fail, whether it's only our family, our neighbors. I mean, oh my God, look at that, you failed, or, you lose money because you tried something. But so it's all centered around the idea that you're going to be criticized. So one of the things that has worked very well for me, and I teach it to my clients now, is called Become Immune to Criticism. And the way you do that, Jim, is you make a conscious decision that you're going to switch and not be judged on kind of how you do things. You're going to be judged on the value of the content and the information that you share. So, for example, this is how I learned that. When I wrote my first book in 2009, I say it took me a year and a half. It actually took me about 11 months to write it, but it took me another 8 or 9 months to get the courage to push the button and print the thing, because my name's on the cover. And this is back, not create demand. Like, you can put a book up today, and if nobody buys it, you're not out any money other than your time. But 2,500, 3,000 books you printed at a time. This is before the print on demand. Right. So I have a garage full of stacks of boxes of books and things like that. And so when I went to this conference, and my book was done but yet to be launched. And this person on stage said, how many people have a book in them, or how many people are in the process of writing a book? A lot of hands go up. He said, you know what? I've written 4 or 5 books, and they're all imperfect. I know for a fact they have misspellings and grammar and things like that. But he goes, here's what I want you to know. And I even forget who it was, because my imperfect book, which is selling today and helping people, is better than your perfect book that's still not published. Right. And I thought, man, what a smackdown. He's talking to me. Right. And so the decision that you make, and so, by the way, I've launched my last 4 books in 60 days from the time I started writing it to the time they hit the market, 60 days. Wow. And the decision that I am comfortable with is that the value of the information and the content that I'm sharing is worth far more, and it's got more value and it will be thought of in a much higher capacity than the imperfect way in which I wrote the book. Now, I still use "and." We've proofread it 9 ways from Sunday, but I know for a fact every time I launch a book, on page 203, the word S-O-N instead of S-U-N, or there's a colon instead of a semicolon, or I mean, there's going to be something wrong with it that some literary English major is going to email you and say, "Hey, dummy, you're using the wrong version of the word to. It's T-O-O, you know?"
Right.
Or something like that. And I say, "Hey, thanks very much. We'll fix that in the next printing." That's a hurdle that people have to get over. Like you starting the podcast. When I became a speaker, I was deathly afraid. Man, what a chump. You can't even, all the head trash that goes into your head.
For sure.
But what you want to do is make a decision. I'm going to choose to be judged on the value of the information I'm sharing and not the imperfect way in which I share it.
Right. Well, I think it's a great lesson. And from my days in the corporate world, I think they would describe that a little bit like really focusing on your customer, focusing on the value that you're providing, where it's not about you. That's sort of egocentric to think that you need to be perfect or that you're afraid of something or afraid of that criticism. That's kind of being inwardly focused,
Yes.
Right. And, focus on the value that you're providing because, people are going to really, really respond to it. So, wow, this is like nuggets of gold right here, Jim. Thanks, man.
Yeah, there's an old expression, "The truth shall set you free."
Yeah.
And when I started doing videos, everything kind of turned for me in 2009. That's when that first little Kodak flip camera came out, if you remember that.
Oh, the flip camera. I remember that. Yeah.
There was no selfie sticks, and so you're holding it up, and I felt, oh my God, this is awkward. They're looking at my nose, and I'm trying to sound and look like a professional businessman. Well, that's not me. I enjoy a good Happy Gilmore movie, and I laugh at immature stuff. And
right.
But I happen to be good at marketing and coaching entrepreneurs, so I that's what I focus on. But my point is, for about 6 months, I'd get on my camera. "Hi, it's Jim Palmer, the newsletter guru. I want to share with you a tip." And I try and be this person that I wasn't. And then one day, what I was doing with my videos is we used to have kayaks. We used to live right next to a lake, and so I'd kayak. And I said, well, instead of me just standing in front of my bookcase or sitting at my desk, I'm going to take my camera and I'll film it while I'm in the kayak. Well, people did like that, but I still kept my professional demeanor even though I was in a kayak. Well, one day I slipped and got wet. And my camera was saved, but I told the story, and all of a sudden I got like 10 times more comments and likes and things like that. Wow. And the leap I made is, wow, when I just be a little bit more of who I really am, I get more of a response. And now, like I do Facebook Lives from the bridge of my floating home, as I say, and I'm not rehearsed. I just turn it on and tell them what's on my mind. And in other words, I just let it flow. I let me flow. I'm not concerned. And the really freeing thing is that if you do that, you're going to attract more people that want to be connected with you. The flip side, which is a plus, most people see as negative, you're going to repel some people.
Right.
I mean, years ago, I had a lawyer who was referred to me by somebody that was one of my clients. So kind of a regular guy, just happened to be a lawyer. Well, this guy happened to be kind of a stuffed shirt. And he said, and by the way, I do all my coaching virtually, especially now, right? And he said, no, we would rather have you come to our office down in the city in Philadelphia. I said, well, I don't do that. And he says, by the way, you're on your videos, you're always in a T-shirt, and it's like, you're probably going to want to dress up. I said a couple things like that, not being mean, but this is, if we're going to pay you what you want to be paid, this is, and I said, yeah, it's not going to be a good fit for me,
Right.
But it's an example of I want to work with certain people. So the more closely you can be who you are in your marketing and your interviews and things like that, you're going to attract those people. And believe me, people are more attracted to authenticity and your genuine self than they are to the perfect person you're trying to be.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there for that. And what's interesting these days with this new technology environment that we're living in, the whole content marketing, the social media, is that you can't really hide behind this persona anymore, or you can't hold that persona when you just go to your office job for those 8 hours a day and then you get crazy, in the evening or whatever. It's more of a 24/7, everybody sees what's going on. So it almost demands that you be more authentic, and you have to get comfortable with being more authentic in these ways. Like you said, we were kind of raised to maybe not even be comfortable with ourselves, generally
Pretty
speaking,
much.
Years ago in the 20th century or something like that, right?
Yeah, now I was born in '58, so I'm a little past like the Leave It to Beaver era where you just,
Yeah, right.
good swift backhand or something. But,
right.
But by the same token, I was raised to respect your elders, and you don't do this, that, and the other thing. I mean, that's common courtesy. That's manners. That's not being somebody who you're not.
Right.
But today, I mean, we won't go down this whole road of just do whatever feels good, But
well,
honestly,
I don't mean that. That's an extreme thing, but it's different from what it was, though, right?
It's very different. And I'll tell you, the other thing is you can't hide with social media, all the technology that's out there. You can't hide. And I tell people in my group all the time, I just use Facebook for personal stuff. I said, it's completely wrong. If you don't think a prospective client is going to check you out on Facebook, you're completely wrong. So
right.
you can't. And my daughter, Jessica, when she had her first son, Nathan, and they wanted to hire a nanny, one of the things they did, they really liked this girl and was kind of a student and looking for part-time work, and they liked her. And when they went to her Facebook, it was all about partying, and I can't wait to get drunk this weekend. And now that could be wrong. You could say, well, that's not fair, but that's reality.
Sure.
You can't hide who you really are. And when you're in business for yourself, you do have to be aware of that.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a different landscape now, which is interesting. I mean, it gives you these opportunities, but also some challenges that come along the way. So, in talking and thinking about your dream academy or how to build your dream job, who are the types of clients that you generally work with? Is there a certain type of person that you find that you like working with, or what's the style? Is it run the gamut from corporate to small business, or?
Well, it does run the gamut, but that's also, I think it was Ben Franklin said the surest way to not succeed is to try and please everybody. I mean, the vast majority of my clients are entrepreneurs and small business owners. I've worked with some newbies, so to speak, but that I really have to be sure they're committed because, there is an investment involved, and while some people are happy to make that investment, I really want you to have an ROI. So if you're not really into this, I won't take you. But for the most part, Jim, I work with people who are striving to get to their first six figures, and that seems to be kind of their first mountain to climb, and then they kind of get somewhere near six figures, and they want to get to maybe 200, 250,000. And there's these benchmarks, and they're not just benchmarks; they're very real, because the mindset that will take you from zero to your first six figures is much different than going from six figures to 250 or $500,000. And I will tell you, your mindset is completely different from going from there to a seven-figure business. So. My largest client was doing $42 million, but by and large, I think 70% of my clients are in the six-figure range, or kind of getting close to it, and they can't get over it, and or they're there and they want to get to the $250,000, to $500,000 range.
I gotcha. Well, if you were just starting out, let's say you're in that first range, like 0 to 100,000, or you're trying to get to your first 100,000. What's the best investment for if you're just getting started? Let's say.
So the best investment, and by the way, when I say this, people goes, well, look at Jim. Well, I was broke. I mean, when I started in my first few years in business, we were up like $140,000 in credit card debt. I was putting my mouth, putting my wallet where my mouth was, so to speak. I was bankrolling my business, and that might be uncomfortable for some people. That's reality for others. I mean, nobody was going to loan me money for a business that didn't have any assets, no rent, no inventory. It was just me.
Right. Exactly.
And I learned that. So I had to bankroll my own lean years. So, but a direct answer to your question, Jim, is that the absolute best thing you can do, actually no matter where you are on the road, is you want to invest and work with a mentor or a coach who has done what it is you want to do. One of the things that drives me crazy is the whole coaching environment has just exploded with growth.
Right.
And, it astounds me when I see somebody who's 19 or 20 years old and, I'm a life coach. I'll help you build your perfect life. I don't know. Maybe they got some God-given skill or talent, but I have no idea what they know about building a life at 19. Right. Right. And on the business side, there's plenty of people who, I'm a seven-figure business coach, and they haven't even created their own six-figure business. So, I really think you want to do your due diligence and work with somebody who has actually done what it is you want to do. Because when the rubber meets the road, I mean, you can kind of regurgitate books you've read, seminars you've taken, and live events you've been to, but every situation you're going to come up against some challenge. How did you handle this? Just a minute. You start flipping through the pages.
Yeah, right.
So you want to work with somebody who's actually has done what it is that they teach.
Yeah, well, I wholeheartedly agree, and I know that there's a lot of just technical information out there. There's a lot of references. There's case studies, but it doesn't necessarily help you sort of translate that into real application terms of, okay, here's a real business situation, or here's a real challenge I'm in front of. How do I use all those tools again? Like, if you don't have that person with the real experience to talk to, it can be difficult. I mean, I think about it like, I teach some music lessons on the side. It's one of my side hustles, and I've taken many lessons myself. So it's a form of coaching is going to a private instructor, and you can jump leaps and bounds when you're with that private instructor, because they see immediately what your problem is, or they'll identify some little quirk that you never would have discovered on your own, if the teacher wasn't there, listening to you and adjusting things. So I think that's something I've come to really appreciate more lately over the last 10 years. I've been in business, and I have my Jim Group consulting business where I do project management and other things, and a lot of people ask me about business in general, and I say what a great thing is to find a good example of who you want to be when you grow up. That's one level. That's one level, but taking it to the next level is, hey, finding that person that you want to be and actually try to hire them to be your coach. I mean, that's
one of the
that's a great idea.
So I've been coaching like 9 years, and while I don't lead with what I'm going to tell you now, I'm not afraid to tell people that, because a lot of people think, oh, my mindset is fine. So I don't lead with I'm a great mindset coach. I lead with the strategies, the marketing, the principles. I have this thing called $1 Million Platform. With my upper end clients, they all get a book done. They work with my writer, my cover designer, and we get that done. But one of the things, in fact, we're launching 7 books in the next 30 days for my clients. And
oh, wow.
All of them at the beginning of the process said, I can't write it. I'm not a writer, blah, blah, blah. There's 7 very excellent books. But one of the things that I've done for all 7 of these people is I've pushed them really, really hard. Oh, I don't think I can write anymore. I said, yes, you can. And here's what you're going to do. And I'll walk them through the process. And I don't think this is good enough. Well, here's why it's going to work. You need somebody to kind of hold your hand, but also be that whip cracker, so to speak, at different times.
Right.
And also to keep them going. I mean, one of my clients a couple of years ago wrote this book that is absolutely helping people that have experienced extreme loss and grief. Through almost every page of that book, this person was putting up barriers. I'm not a writer. I don't know if this is any good. What gives me the right? She's got a kick-butt business helping people do that. And so when I say work with people who've done what it is you want to do, so yeah, I've written 7 books. I'm launching 5 more actually in a week, Kindle, my Dream Business series. So that'll take me from 7 to 12 in a big leap.
Okay.
But I've learned how to do it. I've learned the pain points. I've learned how to get around them. I learned what people like in a book. I learned where to put the good stuff. By the way, you put it all up in the first third, because most people that buy a book don't get past the first third. There's a nugget for everybody.
Yeah,
so don't save the good for the last. Put the good stuff up front. All that stuff. That's just one example of working with somebody who's actually done what it is and can really. That's what a good coach will do. There's this other guy that I used to work with, and he's out there. He's killing it, and he's I'm not a puppy dog. I will be in your face. He's a little more harsh than myself, but he's like really aggressively. And he goes, if you want to really grow and take your business and 5x it, 10x it, you don't want to work with a puppy dog who's going to make you feel good. You want somebody who's going to help you get there. That's his shtick.
I see.
And it's real, but it's his style. So I'm not quite like that, but I take really seriously the people who invest with me, and I will get them to where they want to be if I have to call them out.
Right. Well, I think it's
privately.
Yeah, right. That's good. Well, I think it's a great challenge to yourself. So like people that are listening out there that are thinking, hey, I think I need to change. I want to do something different, or I want to start my new business, or I want to get it to grow a little bit, or I want to, change up my lifestyle. I want to get out of the corporate rat race and come up with a new idea or new style, for my life. I want to live on a boat, It takes that investment in yourself. So you have to be willing to spend a few dollars, take that course, hire that coach, or go to some trade show that might cost you, $1,500 to, to go across the country to find this trade show, to get around like-minded people, to kind of open up your mind. It's really worth the investment. And I've been starting to do that the last probably 2.5 years for myself personally, like traveling more, spending more time on travel and other things that I look at as an investment in myself to change my mind and get me to where I feel like I want to go now. Versus just reacting, and it's like, oh, that's a good job, I'll take that. They're going to pay me a good salary, and okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, reacting is reacting, and if you're in reactive mode, you're always going to be reacting to what comes in front of you. You want to switch that to being proactive. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I work with some of my clients, that it's where it seems just so big, and I can't get through it. I don't know if I'll ever get there. I do this thing. I say, okay, we're going to put a stake in the ground. Well, what does that mean? I learned this before I started my business, Jim. I was unemployed for 1.5 years. I was a VP of marketing for a company at 41. My job was eliminated with the company.
Oh, interesting.
And
okay.
Yeah, and in that year when I was laid off, I had cancer. That's a whole nother thing. But what got me through, because it was super tough, crushed my confidence and my self-esteem. But
right.
Somebody told me, Jim, do you think you'll be working in 5? Because after 1 year, it's like, God, will I ever work? That's the thought, right?
Right.
Jim, do you think you'll have a job in 5 years? I'm sure in 5 years I'll have something. Okay, good. How about 3 years? Yeah. 2 years? Probably. Yeah. How about another year? Do you think you'll find? Yeah. And you keep backing up until you get to a point where you think, yeah, by then I can do it. You put a stake in the ground. So for me, it was like, okay, when I was like coming up on 1 year, I'm like, man, this is taking forever, but I'm pretty sure by Labor Day or Memorial Day or whatever I was, I will have a job. So and what that tells your brain, by the way, is says, okay, there is an end in sight. I will be working again. I don't know when, I don't know what it's going to be, but I at least have to accept the fact that I will get a job again. Or I will grow my business. I will be able to pay off my debt, become financially free. Whatever that is going to happen. And you want to back up until it starts getting into the gray area. Well, I don't know if I can do it in 3 months, but I probably can do it in 1 year.
Right.
And then you put a stake in the ground. And then what you do, Jim, is you figure out, you reverse engineer. And so kind of like I did with you a little while ago when I said, look, if you can get 100 people to pay you $47 a month, you're going to be generating, over 50, close to 60 grand a year, just like that.
Right.
And so you reverse. So if I need, and by the way, when I was at my worst, where I had $140,000 in credit card debt, a good buddy of mine who's super smart, he goes, so Jim, how much you making with No Hassle newsletters? And I told him what we're making for the average member. And by the way, this is where I got the 50 state thing. He says, you don't think you're saturated, do you? I think I had 100 subscribers at the time. I says, not by a long shot. I mean, how many small business owners are there in the country? He goes, exactly. There's hundreds of thousands. He said, what if you were able to find 2, Jim? Just 2 in every state, including Rhode Island, Nevada, North Dakota. Can you find 2 small business owners in every state? That, because I said I could probably do that. So he's working me through this process, and he goes, so that's 100. If you get 100 more clients, Jim, you'll be debt free in like 14 months. And now I was like, man, that's it. Now I went on a tear. I went on a speaking tour, and I over the course of like 14 months, I gave 30 speeches around the country, and I brought in over 100 new subscribers.
Wow.
And I worked my way to be. But that's what it's, again, you work with somebody who's done what it is you want to do, who's smart enough and can push you, because we get so, as humans, we get so stuck in our own swirl of crap that goes on up in our head.
Right. Oh, for sure. Well, you know what? You said something there about speaking. How did you, that's kind of interesting, and I think some, the folks out there, and I'm interested in it. How did you get into speaking? How did you develop? How did you know what to talk about, and how did you find places to speak?
Well, I was going to a lot of live events, like you just mentioned. Every time a live event came up, I could learn from there, and I would watch speakers. I always had I was operating on 2 tracks. I'm watching how the crowd interacts, seeing what works for them. I was learning how people, there's a thing called selling from the stage. So it's not it's not getting up there and giving a talk and getting a round of applause. The hell with that. I want to bring home some bacon, right? So I learned how to sell from the stage, how to craft that presentation. And when I started putting myself out there, I literally, when I got my first gig, it was in front of, I think, 28 people. And I practiced for 3 weeks straight, once or twice a day, giving my whole speech. So when I did it, because I knew nerves would kick in and things like that,
Right.
I had to know it cold. I didn't want to read it, and I didn't want to be like a robot. But I knew it. And when I got up there, I failed. But the next one was a little better,
Right.
and the next one was a little better. And today, I actually have a course called How to Sell from the Stage Like a Pro, because I'm really good at it. But you just start, and you start where you are with what you have, and you get better. There's only one way that you're going to become a better speaker, and that's doing it. There's only one way you're going to learn how to drive a big boat. Start with a small boat and learn the strategies and the techniques and what works, and then keep doing it. You know, when Steph and I moved on this boat a year ago, every time I pulled in and out of a marina, I think, you know, I lost a year off my life because my heart was beating so fast. I mean, it's a pretty scary thing.
Yeah, right.
And today, it's way, way down. I'm not saying I don't get, okay, I got to check the flags, check the current, what's going on. It's still a very high energy 10-minute thing, but I'm much more confident today. And the only reason I'm confident today is like, well, I don't even know how many times we pulled in and out of marinas and docks, but every time I learned something else about the wind and the current and the engines and how things work. And I mean, that's the only way to do it. There used to be a book, you can't learn to ride a bicycle from reading a book. You have to act. You can learn how it works, because like I said, I learned how a twin engine boat can move without touching the steering wheel by watching YouTube. And then when I got in my first boat, I was doing that, and I just kept getting better, and that gave me the skill to then drive this boat.
I see. Yeah, well, that's great. Just you need the experience. You need the muscle memory, the actual experience of your body, like going through those motions, the challenge of being nervous and all that kind of stuff to really just grasp what you're trying to do. Man, there's no substitute. You know.
Yep.
Incredible. Well, Jim, we've got a few minutes left, but before we get out of here, I got a couple of questions for you that I'd like to ask people that come on the show. And one is, and this is a good question for you because you're running all these businesses from your boat, which still seems ridiculous to me. So maybe you could shed some more light on that in terms of the technology and what you're thinking about out there. Is there something that you really are digging or that gives you angst about how the world's turning and how the technologies are changing and how it might affect your business or your lifestyle going forward?
I mean, as it affects my daily life, at least the 3 days that I'm working with my clients, it's all virtual. My greatest challenge, and I knew this when we moved on the boat, and it's okay, but I'm still struggling a little bit, is having internet capacity to talk with you and to talk with my clients. And some of them want to do video, so that's a gigabyte bandwidth suck. And so there's, I have 4 mobile hotspots. I have 3 Verizon jetpacks, and I have one from T-Mobile. Sometimes different companies have different services. Depends where you are. When we're offshore by 3 miles, maybe 4 miles, you're still within range of a tower, and I put an antenna on top of my boat, so if I can pick up a signal, I can boost it. So I've done all of those things, but that is one of the greatest challenges that I face. We were in a marina for 3 or 4 days a couple weeks ago that had no Wi-Fi, and I burned through 3 of my jetpacks. And so, they only give you another 15 gigs of data every 30 days. So
really?
I had to
Okay.
I just had to cough up I forget, it was $35 for an extra 5 gigs because I went over my limit. Now I had to do that because I want to talk with you and my other clients today. But that's my challenge.
I see.
And
okay.
other than that, the technology that I think keeps advancing. I mean, with bots and putting the what do they call when you you put a pixel on somebody that visits your site, now you can retarget them. That's all stuff that's way above my pay grade. I'm so grateful I got a good team that understands, takes care of that stuff for me.
Right. I got you. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, that's one way to deal with it is to outsource it. Make sure you got good folks that understand all those things because things are really moving around very quickly these days. My other question is, as you move forward, and it sounds like you're going through this wild, reinvention already of buying the boat, being on the boat, figuring out how to run your businesses from the boat. But as you go forward, how do you keep your mind open? How do you keep reinventing yourself as you go forward? If there's 1 or 2 tips that you like to give people.
So, seems a little self-serving, but my 7th book was called Just Say Yes. And actually, when I wrote my 6th book, I said, that's it, I'm done. When I had my home office, Jim, I had 3 books behind me. So when I was doing my video interviews, you had 3 and 3. Yeah. And So if I get a 7th book, I'll have to get new custom frames, and that's going to look awkward. So I made a decision. But when we decided, it's so funny, when we decided to move on the boat, I was thinking about the process that we went through, and it started occurring to me like with big light bulbs going off that this is the same stuff my clients are going through. Because I think for the last 3 or 4 years, as I've done well, I've settled into this comfort zone. Things are going well, but I'm happy, but I didn't feel like I was stretching myself, but it didn't become apparent that I wasn't stretching myself because I was just operating in a zone that was working and I was comfortable. When we decided to sell our house, put some of our furniture in storage, give away a lot of stuff, and then move on the boat, we both started having a little bit of what I call the what if syndrome. Well, what if it doesn't work? What if I don't get Wi-Fi? What if I run aground? What if we run out of fuel? What if I hit something? I've done all of those. We've ran aground. The 3rd time was a week ago, and
Wow.
It's not that big a deal. I'm pretty good at getting us off the ground, but
Right.
if we got wedged really tight, you call this thing called sea tow, and they'll come pull you off the sandbar.
Right.
But all of that, and it's interesting that even though Stephanie and I were excited about the big adventure, we call it, we had the what ifs, which are kind of scary. And it's only when you just say yes and actually go for that big dream do you get to experience life. I'll tell you what, we have experienced more, because like I said, we're about 2 days from being at our home port for 2 months. So we've been up and down the East Coast and all these we've been out in the ocean, we've been tossed around like a cork, pretty scary. And we think, how did we do that? It's just hard to think about our life, which very, very blessed, but it seems like we were on autopilot for a while, raising the kids and
Right.
doing this, that, and the other thing, keeping up the house, your biggest asset, doing all the things you normally should do in a normal, quote unquote, life. And here we are, I'll be 60 in another month or two. And we got rid of our biggest asset and we bought a boat, which is not exactly an asset that appreciates.
Right.
But we just said yes, and honestly, we are having the time of our life. We are seeing parts of the country. We're experiencing these little towns. The last 2 towns we were in had population of less than 1,000 because they're along what's called the Intercoastal Waterway.
Yep.
And there's like one restaurant, one marina, and this. I don't know how this other little store stays in business with a town of 1,000 people, but somehow these little towns exist. And when we get off our boat, we don't have a car with us. We have a car at home, but we get off the boat, we walk around town, and people are nice, and people want to help you and ask about your life, and they generally care. It's like, when is the last time you walked down the street, said hi to somebody, and they either didn't reply or they replied while they looked at their phone? And we walk up to complete strangers, and they're so curious about what we're doing, and they'll point to where we want to go, and it's like, my point is, because we said yes to something that is actually a little bit scary because there's a lot of uncertainty, we're having a big adventure. And so I wrote this book. It's a little bit about our personal journey, but how it also applies to being an entrepreneur. And sometimes when it's scary and you don't understand what the next step is, let alone 3 steps down the road, just say yes and keep moving forward and see where that big adventure takes you.
Oh, well, wow. I'm like sitting on the edge of my seat just listening to you, man. I was like right there with you, like on the boat for a second. I swear to God. Well, that's interesting. Wow, what a great experience. And I think you said like a really interesting word there, autopilot, which I know that I've experienced in my life, where you get into a job, you get into life, and things are going well, and things are going great, but you kind of sort of tune out because you are on autopilot. You're just going through the motions, and you're maybe enjoying what you do, but maybe you're not growing or experiencing all of life. And life is short. I mean,
it is.
We're only here for a short time, so I think it's just a good reminder for everybody to kind of raise their consciousness up a little bit. Get out of that autopilot zone and see what else is out there for you.
Life is short. As I said earlier, when I was 41, I found out I had cancer, and pre-surgery for about 2+ weeks, I didn't know what my chances of being alive in 5 years were, either 80-20 or 50-50. And so It really makes you think about that.
Yeah.
I'm cancer-free today. And, but I mean, that was a huge wake-up call for me, because at 41, I doubt I even was contemplating my mortality. But if someone did ask me, well, at 41, I'll probably be at least another 40 years, maybe 50. Well, guess what? And all of a sudden, you don't know if you're going to be around in 5 years. That really makes you take stock. And I think that's a big reason we do some of the things we're doing, is because maybe the prudent thing would have been for both of us to work doubly hard for another couple of years, pad the 401ks a little bit more.
Right.
But what if something happens and we don't go on this adventure? So I think, a lot of people say, well, I'm going to do that when I retire. I think try and live your dream lifestyle every day if you can make it happen, right? And people have different versions of what their dream lifestyle is. But try and fit that into your daily routine. Stop living for the weekends and keep pushing off when you'll eventually go fishing and things like that.
Right. Well, certainly it's added to your life, enriched your life. It sounds incredible. And I'm sure you weren't thinking at 41 that you'd be living on a boat.
No,
right?
Certainly not.
That's crazy to me. Well, Jim, hey, thanks for being on the show. Before we get out of here, if people want to get in touch with you and are interested in connecting and learning more about making their dream business come true, or their dream lifestyle come true for that matter, how do people get in touch with you?
So the home base is getjimpalmer.com, getjimpalmer.com. But I would love it if you want to come over to my Facebook group. It's Dream Biz Group, dreambizgroup.com. That'll take you to my Facebook group. And as long as you're an entrepreneur or want to be, you can join there. And if anybody's curious on the personal side, our blog is ourfloatinghome.com. The name of our boat is Floating Home. Ourfloatinghome.com. You can see the boat. We're blogging about our journey. You can take a tour of the boat and things like that. So if you're curious about that part of it, check out our blog.
Oh, okay, cool. I think I'll do both. It sounds great. Okay, well, Jim, thanks for being on again.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, cool.
All right, Jim.
Thank you for listening to Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of.